All right, so hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and I'm excited to bring you guys another Star Wars story interview. This guest has already appeared on Mark of Balance before. He was involved in the Obi Wan Kenobi series Roundtable. He gave some great opinions, and during that time, I was like, "Hey, you got to come back, and we got to do a Star Wars story interview." And throughout the weeks of Obi Wan and Andor, he would always reach out and ask my opinions on the episodes. And in between those serious talks about Star Wars, he would always send me some memes to kind of break that up. So really excited to have him on today. And say hello to everyone, Chris.
How are we doing, guys? Let's get it going.
I'm going to admit I forgot to record the first time we went through this intro. So this is the second time going through this. My first time I messed it up. So I'm really upset because I nailed the intro the first time, and this one just wasn't as good. I know it wasn't as good, so we're doing our best to bounce back, and I know a good episode is ahead, so it's going to make up for it. This interview was talked about for so long, and of course, like it seems that always happens with the Star Wars story interviews, I always talk about it, and then I see these people out at bars at the Jersey Shore, and when I run into them, I'm like, yo, why haven't we done the episode? We got to do the episode. Are you still down to come on? And that's true here with Chris. We met at Bar A, I think, probably over the summer at some point, and I was like, dude, we got to put it together.
I think it was August, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Felt like an August night. Yeah.
Oh yeah, fun night.
But yeah, it happened with Ashley, the last guest I had on, and it happens with Chris now. So really excited to have you on. And we haven't really talked about your Star Wars origin story before. So aside from, the talks we have about current Star Wars, I don't really know about your past. And that's what's really exciting about these Star Wars story interviews, to give you guys this platform to share your story. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what was that first moment where you were hooked in Star Wars and you were like, this is something I care a lot about and I want to know everything that happens with this series?
So I would say that there are a few scenes that come to mind, but the one scene that really, started the whole, I would say, the obsession. It's definitely an obsession. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the one scene that I recall really catching me, I'm reeled in on the line here, was the Cloud City confrontation with Vader and Luke. That scene from the start, when he, the breathing begins all the way up until he falls down the chute, is like, to me, it's cinematic perfection. Mm-hmm. And also just it really sets the stage for the gravity, I would say, of the series, of how like the kind of the philosophical hero's journey-esque, like, and then it ties to the Greek tragedy from the prequels. It really kind of comes into focus after watching the prequels, especially once you see the prequels and watch the confrontation on Cloud City. It really puts it all into perspective, where it's amazing. So I would say that's the scene that really rings true to what reeled me in as a forever fan, fanatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Empire Strikes Back did so many things right, from bringing a new tone to Star Wars, a much more serious and dark tone to Star Wars, but also, as you said, that philosophical thing that I started to appreciate as I got older. Those scenes with Yoda when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I'm not a really big fan of the Dagobah scenes, but then as you get older and you listen to what he has to say, you're like, damn, this guy was spitting. I love it.
I couldn't agree more. I was so against, I would always fast forward as a kid, the Yoda scene, and it wasn't until years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I started to really realize I guess the gravity of those encounters as well. Really sets Luke's stage up, his own personal stage, to confront Vader, and the whole thing kind of setting that in all motion. It's fantastic. And seeing Yoda from the prequels so buttoned down, so just on point, and then you see him going nuts, and it really makes sense too. 19 years in exile, in complete isolation, went nuts. Even the strong-minded Yoda kind of lost his marbles a little bit.
Yeah, you'd have to think, it's an interesting point. You'd have to think that people who watched the originals and then saw the prequels for the first time and saw Yoda being almost a completely different type of Jedi and type of person, it probably was pretty jarring to go from that first scene where he's crawling around, making jokes and screaming, and then in the first Phantom Menace, he's very serious. He's leading the council, and throughout, I mean, Revenge of the Sith, he's...
Yes. He's like the head of the wise men, leading the wisest. This very articulate, very strong-minded, powerful. And he's still powerful, but he's just Luke thought he was some little ground critter. He's like, where's Yoda? Jedi? Who's this little thing running around?
Right. And you mentioned Darth Vader, you mentioned Luke, you talk about that whole lineage thing, and Star Wars is about family at its core.
Hmm.
And most of the time when I have these interviews, people always tell me that they inherited the Star Wars love from a family member, whether it be a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister. Is that true for you too?
Yeah, so I think it may have been discussed in that first cut as you referenced,
I,
but
Chris, I was trying to do it naturally so they didn't know we messed it up the first time. I was just trying to.
oh, I thought wait, didn't you announce it that happens? Didn't you
I did,
announce
but
it?
I did, but I was gonna do it again. Like, oh, you mentioned it in the one that we didn't record that your dad was a big
Mark,
influence, and I was like, all right, I'll slide it in.
Mark, you're a superstar. We all have mistakes. That's what fun. You know, I might have distracted you too a little bit. We were just discussing other stuff all over the place, and then we kind of went right into it. So it might be my fault, kind of getting you all corrupted there.
No,
Like, you
no,
know,
it's all good.
don't be too hard on yourself. But yeah, my dad definitely kind of impressioned Star Wars on me. You know, like I think from what I recall, he saw Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi in theater when they came out. Been a diehard fan since the get go, and I recall being very young when he first showed me New Hope. Like not too young, but it was like I was very young. You know, so I said before, I had the VHS tapes. You know, I had to rewind the VHS tapes to watch the movies. You know, so my affinity towards Star Wars goes way back, and he was a big part of that. Get buying the lightsabers, like the little plastic Hasbro, pull them out, and we do stuff like that. So he definitely was the one that kind of reeled me into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you guys have those battles where, he taught you, but you probably know more than him, but he was the OG, so he has that on you. Do you guys have those canon knowledge battles, or does he just give up and be like, well, you weren't there when it first came out?
So there's been a few of those where he kind of like will say, Chris, you weren't even a thought, when I saw Star Wars. I was in the theater watching this. We were all just blown. Our minds were blown. But by and large, he'll kind of defer to me with those kind of canon plot questions where the show goes very quickly. It's like there's an acronym or an abbreviation. They don't give the explanation fully. He's kind of like left a little bit confused. So he'll like turn again. When we were texting earlier, I was mentioning we were watching Andor. I saw Andor. I saw it when it came out, when it was being released. We were texting about it, but my dad has just started watching it, so I've been watching it with him, and we just finished the episode 11. So we have the finale to watch.
Oh, nice.
A interview. So we'll be doing that. But there's definitely that back and forth a little bit. Sometimes like I'll lay it on too thick, and then he'll be like, settle down.
Yeah. And what is he thinking of Andor so far?
Oh, he loves it. He said it's very different, and I agree. It's a radical departure from, I would say, the majority of their content in terms of the consistent seriousness. That's like kind of like why I love like Empire Strikes Back, Revenge of the Sith so much, is because it really, it's not just all lovey-dovey, goofy, or like, I'm not saying the others aren't, but there's more like Prequel Trilogy. I have a very strong disdain, we'll say, very strong animus, opposition for the sequel trilogy. I could go on for 3 hours, so we will not open that can of worms. But Andor was a sigh of relief, where I've been bombarded with all this content from Disney, for Star Wars for the past 4 or 5 years, and it's just been many disappointments. So this was finally a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Where I'm finally okay. Pacing's on point. Characters are great. Serious. This does not feel like Obi Wan felt so underfunded. This show does. The seriousness of it, all those factors combined, really produces a great show. If only it was like a Jedi Sith show. That's the only. I'm not hated for it, but that would make the show unbelievable if there was the Jedi Sith involvement somehow. But
no, you're right. Yeah,
I'm very content with what we got. Spy thriller in the Empire, and the informants, and the showing the rebellion's not all perfect. Luthen's not the best guy on town. He's definitely a dubious moral character, but he's fighting for the right thing. So that very interesting of the dynamic there. For Andor.
Yeah, you need those kind of people, unfortunately, to get their hands dirty for the good of the world, which is always cool to see. I'm very interested to see how the older generation of Star Wars fans takes Andor. I really want to get my dad to watch it because, like you said, it's such a radical departure. And I think while they do enjoy the other stuff, Mandalorian is, of course, a lot of fun. The cameos are great. Book of
Yeah,
Boba Fett and Obi Wan, if that's
yeah,
your cup of tea, go for it. But I really am curious to see what that kind of critical type of show comes across as to that older generation. I think, you know, by and large, they would love it, and I really want to get my dad into it. But yeah, man, the on-set locations just did such a wonder to the feeling of the show compared to all these shows utilizing the volume and those backgrounds that look great. Obviously, it's a revolution in movie and TV making, but at the same time, you do lose that tactile feeling of being in those grand sets or being on the side of a mountain in Scotland. It's incredible. And seeing a TIE fighter fly through a valley in like Scotland was just so cool. I absolutely love that part of Andor.
yes, amazing. And that's like the thing that really annoyed me with Obi-Wan was the scale issue. Like it just felt so small. Like again, Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and even the OG trilogy. There's so much of that. You're really feeling the scale of what's around the characters. This vast, space compared to, we'll say, Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, and in parts, Mando is the best they've produced. I would say Disney. Rogue One's up there. I have a lot of friends that critique Rogue One, but I think Rogue One is a great film by and large. We can get to that a little bit later, about Rogue One, but I would say by and large I got a little sidetracked. But what I was saying was with Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, parts of Mando, it felt so small compared to like the prequels, the OG trilogy, and that's why I think Andor did great, where they had the use of. I'm not sure what you probably know the name of it, like the revolutionary set thing, that the all encompassed like ecosystem they build, whatever.
Oh, the volume, yeah.
That's what it's called, the volume. Yeah. So no, I'm not going to knock that, but it just does hinder the Star Wars realm, because the big catch of Star Wars is it's galactic. The scale is so vast, So seeing these giant planets and these different ecosystems all coalesce together, it's awesome. So that was a big annoyance with me with Obi-Wan. It felt so underfunded. The sets just felt small and crammed, and that was a big problem, show, among other things. But I was forewarned, Star Wars will open up can of worms everywhere. I try to stay on the same track. But
no, that's fine. Tangents are
off the path. All right,
that's my job. I gotta reel you in, but tangents are welcome. Yeah, I think most of the sets in Obi-Wan, the setting of some of the fights, some of the confrontations are just they didn't add to what was going on screen. Me and my sister did a rewrite for it, and we just thought about that final battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Of course, the dialogue was there, the acting was there, but it happening in just this empty black sand and just pillars everywhere. There wasn't any like connection to that. If there was, maybe some, on Mustafar, you have fire, you have lava, you have literally Anakin's inner turmoil visualized in front of you, and Obi-Wan fighting against that. Like that tells a story, but with Obi-Wan, it was just they always seemed to fight in these just empty spaces, and it was just because they used the volume, unfortunately. And maybe if they, got a little more creative with where they fought, it might have added a bit more to it. But that's my little tangent.
Would you agree that in like the camera views of the duel itself, like if you compare Revenge of the Sith or honestly any major duel in the prequels, any major duel, there's a lot more direct footage of them fighting, just crazy choreographed duels compared to, I would say, there were some great scenes of that duel. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
But it like kept zooming out. You're seeing their heads above and backwards and to the side. It's kind of, you're not really seeing the full picture. It was very little full picture duels,
Yeah.
Problem.
Star Wars was always widescreen. It was always a wide shot. It was always, you could see everything that's going on. But more modern Star Wars, at least I noticed this definitely when I watched the sequel trilogy. I don't want to push you too far in this direction, but when you watch the sequel trilogy, there's a lot more interesting and zoomed in camera angles that when you go back to watch the prequels of the originals, it's all very wide shots. You see everyone, you see what's going on. You can see these fights, especially, Luke and Vader's fight in Return of the Jedi, when that camera is just wide and just following them as they fight across the whole throne room. I really love that. I love when you can see everything. I don't like the shaky cam kind of thing. So even though, like you said, yeah, even though like you said, the choreography in that fight was great.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the camera's just in and out. It's up and down. It's like, whoa, let me enjoy it.
And it almost looks like too when there's that one zoom out angle above. It looks like a really good part of the duel too. Like just
right.
like they're zooming out on a great part where it looks amazingly choreographed. We're seeing like this bird's eye view of their heads and the lightsaber. Right. Going on here.
Yeah, I want to see that.
right.
Yeah,
and you're right.
Want to go ahead.
Last line on this part, like the Cloud City duel. You said the throne room duel. All of those have that wide shot camera angle where you're seeing the whole thing unfold. So I just wish that they brought more. I'm really hoping like anything that's produced now, like the Ahsoka series or whatever, any other lightsaber scene at all, any duel of any nature should be wide filmed. It should be like the OG and prequel trilogies,
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe modern day film, they think it's lazy because you're not really doing anything interesting with the camera. You're just showing everything. But I think that's just, a different style of film that's come about compared to, those old 3-hour movies like Lawrence of Arabia and all that. But we're not going down. Yeah.
That's definitely the reason.
Yeah.
Like trying to outperform the past and like modify and change. Like they new is better. They always want to make something bigger, different, so.
I do want to hop back to what you said about having a show with the quality of Andor, but with Jedi and Sith type characters. And I totally agree. I think in moments, Clone Wars and Rebels got there for those type of things, but seeing it in live action, I think would be really special. And I think that's what Disney has to do with either Ahsoka or the Acolyte. I think the Acolyte is more tuned for that with going back to the High Republic and having a Sith main character. You seem hype about the Acolyte.
I think I've just been so like bombarded with friends saying, "Don't get your hopes up. You got all hype for Obi Wan and we're let down." I'm like, Acolyte, just the tone of that, what we know already, just seems so captivating. The notion of Sith infiltrating the Jedi Order, the High Republic, the ancient days, is very, very interesting, I think. So there's a lot of potential there. But I said the same thing with Obi Wan. So I'm reserved judgment. I'm going to be very, very cautious in my hopes. But I think there's a lot of ground there. They could really just a nice playground. They could really just go wild with it. It could be really interesting.
Yeah, and it's the first we're seeing of the era in live action, which will be amazing. The one saving grace that I think should bring your hopes up a bit is that Disney is only messed up with legacy characters. All of their new content, other than the sequel trilogy, that they still were figuring out Star Wars at that point. But all of the
characters, so you're right. So you're right. That's still valid. That's still like logically tuned. What you're saying.
Yeah. So those new shows, Mandalorian, Andor was a new character with all these new characters, and now the Acolyte. I think that kind of matches up. Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, they had a tough time with those. Solo, they had a tough time with that. But it seems when they do new characters, which, surprise, surprise, when you do new things, people enjoy that and gives you more freedom. So, yeah, hopefully they nail that. That's my most anticipated show.
I agree. I think like we've been waiting for something like this where like, from the days of when Mando first, like the thought or like the plot of Mando first came out, so many fans were saying, just give us some ancient Sith main character film or show. Give us something like where it's going to be dark and serious and a lot of action. I would love to see a Sith on Sith battle. Again, Clone Wars gave that to us, but nothing beats live action,
Right.
So I would love for that to unfold, really see like the inner turmoil. Does Acolyte predate the Rule of Two? It does, or it postdates it, right? Is that what it is?
It definitely postdates it. I think the Rule of Two was thousands of years ago, but at this point in time, the Sith have disappeared, essentially. Like, that's the general feeling among the galaxies, that the Sith are no more. So I think it's going to explore, them coming back, which would be really, really cool.
Right. And seeing like that, the initial part of the grand plan, big plan, there's a term of art there. Like there's a phrase where like that Palpatine finished it. He was the one to finally finish. There are a bunch of Sith ancestors going through trying to complete what Palpatine ended up finishing, So it'll be cool seeing that plan kind of hatch where they finally infiltrate the Jedi Order or the Republic or the Senate, whatever we see, and kind of lay the groundwork for the later Sith to take over at the end. So I think there's, as you did, I think you correctly deduced that it'll be a good show. I think you're right. All the new content that has new characters has been great. I've had little to no critiques of like Mando, Andor, Rogue One, but just the legacy characters, sequel trilogy, Boba Fett, Obi Wan, where there's a lot of issues. So I think you're yet again on the right track there, and you're thinking.
Appreciate it. You said something really good there, and I love that idea that the plan didn't start with Palpatine. It might have been something that was in the works for hundreds of years between the Sith and really taking over the galaxy. And it just reminds me of that line in The Siege of Mandalore with Darth Maul when he says, it's beginning, the plan, the only plan that matters. And that line is so chilling in that episode. I absolutely love Darth Maul's character throughout Clone Wars and how he comes back. And that kind of transitions me. Yeah, that kind of transitions me to ask you about your relationship with Clone Wars, because I think you've expressed that you've watched it. I think there's parts of it you've enjoyed, but I actually don't know your overall feeling. Did you watch it as a kid, or was that something you caught up on a little bit later?
So I would say I watched about a season or two as a kid, years and years ago when it was on TV. I watched maybe a season, a part of it. It was very little, and I had not really, even back then when I was a fan of Star Wars, I had not immersed myself the way I have now. So it wasn't until like probably around quarantine, like time period, where I really sat down with what I know and watched it all. And like, this is phenomenal. It's an insane show. Sure, there's a few episodes that are annoying, but that's filler, and I have no problem with that.
Right.
There's just a treasure. The content is it's never ending. It's a treasure trove. Like the Darth Maul sequence, the Fives and the clones discovering the chips segment. There's so many just amazing, like Anakin and the what's that planet called? With that
Mortis.
That whole thing is awesome. Like there's so amazing parts of Clone Wars where it really ties in a lot. It shows Anakin's dark rise, because a big critique of the prequel trilogy, especially episode 3, is that there's we all of a sudden see Anakin go from this great Jedi to this evil Sith. And I disagree with that. I think the movie still did a pretty good job showing you the transition, but Clone Wars went further, showing him interrogate that separatist leader by the Force choke, or how he unleashed on Clovis. There's a lot of really cool things there. Or there's that one scene where Obi Wan and what's his lover's name?
Satine. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Being held at gunpoint by that senator, and he's like, "You must kill me in cold blood. Who will do this?" And then Anakin just comes out of nowhere and shanks the guy, and he's like, "That's all good."
He's gonna blow up the ship.
He's like, "We're gonna blow up the ship." And that's like, yeah, you're right. But then the slippery slope. That was like the first thing that happened, the first like dark thing, and then the interrogation, and then the blow up on Clovis. So it's like it shows you, yeah, you might have been right in the first instance, but it got a little dicey,
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love Clone Wars. It's what I grew up on, so it's a huge connection for me. But as a lore and kind of canon enthusiast like you, going back and watching Clone Wars, knowing everything you must have realized how much it expanded the galaxy to a point where Star Wars is now. You're like, oh my gosh, all of this stuff is because Clone Wars did all that to open it up.
I was like flabbergasted, especially by season 4. Season 4 on, it just gets so crazy. It's like there's a meme where it's like season 1 to 3 or 1 to 2, and it's like Donald Duck, and it's all happy go. And then it's a scene like season 4 to 7. It's like Donald Duck in like a World War I trench, all black and blue, and it's like a war drama. It really is a crazy transition. The show's pacing and the tone, the lighting, how they look. It's an intentional doing of George Lucas to really change the feeling of the show by and large. It's amazing. And like Palpatine involvement with Maul and the fight with him and a Savage. It's just, the show is amazing. It gives you so much content where it really provides, as you said, it's like kind of like, to me, Phantom Menace, the live action version, where it's like building the universe. Like Phantom Menace, great job really building out the universe, the politics of Palpatine rising. Clone Wars fills the gaps, builds the universe, all in one little neat package. One question I had before: favorite Star Wars? Clone Wars. Done.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah, I was gonna probably follow up, but yeah, no, Clone Wars is definitely my favorite as well. I mean, Andor's making a push, but Clone Wars just has that nostalgia factor. And you kind of, yeah, and you just never knew where Clone Wars was gonna go because it was like a sandbox at the time. And yeah, the fact that like Mandalore has become such a deep aspect of this new generation of Star Wars, and that was entirely because of Clone Wars. I mean, Mandalore always had that draw because of the expanded universe and the Sith and Mandalore wars and the Jedi Mandalore war. Like it was all there in expanded universe, but like Clone Wars really brought Mandalore into the mainstream, and everyone now is so excited about learning more about Mandalore and Mandalorians and their culture and the Darksaber and everything. And it was all just like this all happened in like season 2 in 2010 in Clone Wars. Like it's crazy that it's blown up this much.
And it makes sense too. There's just so much good stuff there, like there's different facets you can explore. And I think the next season of Mandalorian will really show us. I always forget her name too. The redhead.
Oh, Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan. So we'll see more of that, I think, as well. So there's a lot. Maybe possibly see Mandalore live action would be phenomenal. That'd be nuts.
Yeah, looks like it.
Oh my god, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that throne room scene in Clone Wars was sick.
So many good throne too. Oh my god. Star
Wars is great at throne room scenes. We have to just appreciate that. If there's a throne room, it's Star Wars is on top.
It has to hear that message, realize throne room scenes in there. It's always perfect, Even they won with Snoke. That was pretty good though.
I was gonna say even as a sequel hater, I mean, you got to admit the Last Jedi throne room scene was sweet.
I agree. It was an amazing compared to the other ones, but like if it's a standalone scene, yes, it was well made, very interesting. Like I love the fight scenes with the Imperial guards.
Yeah,
well done. But just compared to like Maul and Ahsoka,
of course,
the Luke, all that stuff. So
it has some tough competition. So we'll give it a pass.
Yes, we'll give it a pass for sure in that respect.
Yeah, no, I love chopping it up about Clone Wars. I know you said you weren't a big Rebels fan, but you did appreciate some parts of it, right?
100%. So there's two problems with me with Rebels. I think the plot lines are very interesting. They have a lot of good stuff going on with the Inquisitors, the Grand Inquisitor, with the whole Ahsoka with Vader is just insanely good. Mm-hmm. But my problem, and then also the Obi Wan Maul stuff, obviously. But I think my problem with Rebels was really just an aesthetic issue. The lightsaber, couldn't get over that. The pin, the needles, like I couldn't get over it. Toothpick lightsabers, I couldn't. I tried.
Yeah.
I couldn't get over that. And then the animation itself felt like the Clone War, Bad Batch, all these shows, Tale of the Jedi, they all look. It's a more mature, like animation. Definitely. Almost. Rebels just felt very kiddish to me. How they like Ahsoka looked great. That was the only, and even Obi-Wan, but like in Maul, Ahsoka was they did very well with Ahsoka looking older. But besides that, I think that they made a mistake with that direction they went in with the artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, they had to move to Disney XD because Disney bought Star Wars and then canceled Clone Wars. So no one ever talks about that. That's why Clone Wars ended. But
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah,
that's why it went down.
Yeah, Disney bought it, and I don't think they wanted to air Clone Wars on Cartoon Network anymore. They wanted it on their own channel, and there was just like a whole bunch of stuff. But I think they weren't planning on doing this, but I think it's a blessing in disguise because the fact that Clone Wars did take that 8-year break, that's why the Siege of Mandalore was able to look so good because the technology had advanced so much at that point where if we had gotten Siege of Mandalore, in 2000, whatever it was, probably 13 or 14, maybe 15, it would have looked great, but it wouldn't have looked as good as it did in 2020, because that was like a crazy upgrade on animation.
It's crazy, like you know this obviously, but how they brought in the Darth Maul actor to choreograph Darth Maul's fall. That's insane. That's insane. Like it looks so real. It looks so Phantom Menace-esque. How he's dueling is because it's him, you know, which is, I find awesome. It's just that's I would say the best duel of Star Wars animation of all time. Versus Maul, 100% insane, you know.
Yeah, the mocap thing was so cool. I can't believe they went for it and they nailed it. So absolutely. And the last thing I want to say about Clone Wars is it's like you said, it's the last thing that George Lucas touched in the Star Wars universe. So it still has that like original creators touch to it, which it should be appreciated.
100%. I think that's like where we start to see that divergence from just that the pure canon, where to me it's the most satisfying. Where again, what Mando's great, and then Andor has really gotten me a lot more refreshed, a lot more confident in Disney. But like that was the last thing was Clone Wars. You know, after that we had the sequel trilogy, or the time period, at least when you watch stuff, and then it was just many years of losing hope. That Clone Wars was like the last taste of George Lucas and his perfection of what he created. You know.
Right. So we've talked about a lot of TV and movies, and I do want to ask about characters and what characters resonate with you most. I know during our Obi Wan series talk through, we mentioned that, you know, Darth Vader and Anakin were a huge favorite character for you. Aside from talking about him, I assume you want to talk about him and your connection to him, but are there any other characters that that resonate with you? And if not, go for it with Darth Vader and Anakin.
I would say, I mean, obviously, I would say Luke. So my main favorite is Anakin. You know, the Anakin Vader dichotomy. It's a Greek. I always call the prequel trilogy. It's Shakespeare in space. You know, it's like the Greek tragedy, where then it shoehorns into Luke's hero's journey. You know, to salvage and fix the tragedy of Anakin. You know, so I guess while I would say Luke would be the next guy, the next best in my view of characters would be he's the catalyst that ignites Vader's redemption. You know, Ahsoka tried, she failed. Obi-Wan tried, he failed. They couldn't bring him back. He was too just engulfed in the dark side. But it wasn't. And so that being said, you turn to what brought Anakin in the end to the dark side was just love for his family, love for Padme. You know, he loved his family so much. He sealed with his mother. That was the big first step to the dark side, the fear of losing his mother, her dying, and then his fear of losing Padme the same way, you know, an early death, resonates to why Luke was able to kind of change his way. Was he never lost that love for his family. You know, once Padme died, he was the cold-hearted killer. He had nothing else to live for besides the dark side power he was craving. But once his son comes in the picture, that facade, that stone-cold killer starts to recede, and Anakin's coming back out, because the love for his family was everything. There was no dark side for Anakin without love for his family, you know? So it really is very impactful seeing Obi-Wan, basically his father couldn't succeed. Ahsoka, basically his kid couldn't succeed, but his real son, actual blood from Padme, was able to succeed in igniting that redemption arc. You know, it's phenomenal storytelling, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely great way to put it. I love that view of it. I definitely have to send you the link to something, because there is a book out there, a canon book that came out recently, where they basically retell Star Wars in Shakespearean language. I forget what it's called. It's not like the Odyssey, obviously not the Odyssey, but like it's basically written in Shakespearean language, and it's a retelling of the Star Wars saga.
Right.
I have to find that for you so you can read it. I don't know if it's good or not. I don't know if they nail it, but the storyline's there. I mean, the storyline is the Greek tragedy, but if they nail the writing, you'd probably love it.
Oh, I'm all on board. Shoot that over to me. I will definitely. That sounds awesome. Because people say, I hate one annoyance of mine. My friend group, they will often launch this critique of the prequels about the writing. and they'll say that the writing is not there or it's badly written. And I'm like, you're not really getting what he was trying to accomplish. He was intentionally writing it that way, where they deliver these lines. It's Shakespearean, like the way they would emphasize things or say things differently than, like, less straightforward verbally, for example, or something Padme would say to Anakin. Like, it's just, these lines are Shakespearean themselves. The way he was trying to accomplish is there. But people like are expecting just this. It's like they're wearing a baseball cap to a football game. Like, they're not understanding what he was trying to do. That's how I view it. With
No,
like, the
I totally
writing.
get it. Yeah, there's a lot of colorful language. It's overacted, not in a bad way, but it is overacted. It's that dramatic play type of acting where there's just a camera there. But when you watch it, it's very theatrical, and I agree. That was the point of it. And while there is lines of dialogue that probably aren't the best, I think the world building, the story itself, the themes in the story that are there are what people need to really focus on. Because I think there's no missteps from Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith. That story, that through line, that theme is pretty flawless. Dialogue, we can argue, but yeah, that was the point.
Minimal. Like, people that over critique it just have, I think, an axe to grind with the prequels or Star Wars in general. I have one friend who loves to lead the charge on this, and he hates Star Wars. So it's like he has an agenda. He's not really here in his critiques. He's biased. He's not being objective. And I'm biased, but I can be objective at the same time. He can't, So I'm quick to condemn that.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's what I live by. Biased but objective. That's what we do this podcast for. Biased but objective. All right, Chris. So we've talked about, I think, everything. We've talked about TV shows coming, TV shows from the past. We've talked about movies, themes, writing, Shakespeare, Greek tragedies. We've talked about it all. So we got to get down to the best part of these episodes. My favorite part, at least, is hearing the guests' Star Wars movie rankings, best to worst. Are you going to be including Solo and Rogue One? I think you are, because you liked Rogue One, so I believe you will, but we'll see.
I have not actually seen Solo. I've seen clips, but see, Han never really, like, Han later on is great, but I never had an interest in seeing the background leading with Han. It sounds, I know it hurts the ears. Han's amazing, and Harrison Ford's phenomenal, but that's also a thing with me. I was okay with the Alec Guinness and McGregor, but to me, Harrison Ford is Han Solo. That's just one of those things that kind of reeled me back in from watching it. And also, again, the plot line, it's just like the smuggler. I never really captivated me, but Darth Maul scene's awesome. That's insane. But I just had a huge interest in seeing that one. So I will have to exclude that from my list.
That's fine. I totally agree with you. That was my biggest gripe about Solo, was the fact that I don't think it was a necessary story, and I don't think there was a need to recast Harrison Ford, because, like you said, with Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor, those were two different times, two different ages. There was a need, and it just made sense to recast. It wasn't really a recast at that point.
Right. They did really well, I think, with McGregor's not impersonation, but his kind of taking over of Obi Wan. It looked pretty good in terms of transformation. I think it's a bit different, as you said, with the time, just the grand scale of time in between each. It's different. So yeah, right. You're right on the money there.
Gotcha. All right, so Rogue One will be included. Solo, haven't seen it, which is fine. So we're gonna rank the 9 saga films plus Rogue One. Will you include the Clone Wars film? That's another question.
Probably not. I will give my thoughts on the Clone Wars film, but
sure.
I wouldn't include that in my rankings of the films. It's a bit different.
That's fine.
Animation and live action, it's just hard to me to include those together,
Okay. Yeah, I like setting the parameters, so that's fine. All right, so we'll just jump in at number 10. What is your bottom of the bottom list, and then you can just go off on your list.
100%. Last Jedi is a complete and utter abomination to the Star Wars legacy. It is horrendous, okay? They completely blaspheme and adulterate Luke Skywalker. They destroy the character. I get so worked up. I'll keep it simple here. He is a man of redemption. He's a man who was able to see through Vader's, dark side. He brought Anakin out of the suit. To me, it's like Vader murdered thousands, if not more. Who knows the unknowns? With the horrible things he has done, the younglings and everything he's done. Luke still saw the good in him and still waited to the end and got him back on track, so to speak. In Last Jedi, Kylo has one bad dream and he's out with the lightsaber about to kill him. It's like, no! And then he completely destroys the Jedi Order. And instead of fixing the problem that he kind of just created, he takes off, F's off to an island in solitude. Like, no, you're not Yoda. Yoda was fleeing the Empire. Yoda did what he could, He didn't create this problem. He was just a victim of the problem, He had to go. So to me, it's such a dang travesty what was done to Luke Skywalker. So Last Jedi, bottom.
All right.
I go a little crazy with Last. I get
that's fine. I enjoy Last Jedi. I actually like Luke to a degree and the direction they went with it. But this is your list. I'm gonna let you ride, and that's the point. That's the point of this, is giving you guys the spotlight to talk about it, because there's no wrong list. I mean, there is a wrong list. There's definitely a wrong list, but I don't publicly say that there's a wrong list. Yeah. Last Jedi isn't the problem in that wrong list. I'm just saying if certain movies were in the top 3, it would get a little dicey. But
I know
keep going. Number 9. What's next?
Rise of Skywalker, I would say.
Okay.
I mean, there are some great scenes, like the Force storm, like the Palpatine storm was crazy. That's an insane scene, like seeing that dark side power that we've never seen before. I think it was very interesting. Like the noise, it broke the speakers, when that goes off. Very, but again, they didn't do a great job explaining his return. There's all the memes. Somehow he returned, the writing, and there were some other forced things throughout the episode. And also, the big problem with the sequel trilogy is that George Lucas said that Star Wars is a story of Anakin Skywalker. It is the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker. And to me, the sequels completely diverge from that notion. There's very little Anakin Skywalker involvement, Even just having a Force ghost to him would be nice. No, nothing. We got Jack. So to me, Rise of Skywalker is number 9, because just, again, it tried to retcon Last Jedi a little bit, but it just didn't get there, in my opinion. So that's number 9.
Right. Yeah. Some people would say the legacy of Darth Vader for Kylo Ren, and to kind of.
Right. That's true.
That. Some people say that. I don't think that was, aside from overtly being like, oh, look, he's trying to absolutely dress like him and sound like him. I don't think outside that there's a lot of weight behind it, but that's probably the direction they were going. But I totally agree. Darth Vader or Anakin and that lineage should have been more front and center. But
right.
Yeah, definitely. So number 9,
Force Awakens. So Force Awakens, it's a good film. Again, standalone, it's a good film. I think it was great seeing the cast again, seeing Harrison Ford, seeing Carrie Fisher. It was phenomenal. Luke in the end. So it was only 10 seconds, but it was still seeing Luke in the end nonetheless. So I think by and large that was good. But again, to me, it kind of my hate for Last Jedi kind of permeates into my hatred for Force Awakens. It kind of to me, it felt like Disney was trying to kill off the old to shepherd in the new. And they kind of attacked the old that we all loved to bring the new in who we really didn't love. We have Finn's great. I like Rey. People hate on Rey a lot. I don't really see the problem with Rey. I think the Palpatine thing is pretty cool, but it explains her Force powers and stuff like that. But again, I just think they shoehorned it in too hard to make this the new crew at the expense of kind of destroying a little bit the old. So number 9, Force Awakens.
Right. Was it? Okay. Maybe that might have been 8. My bad. Yeah, because no, I said it wrong. So Last Jedi, Force Awakens at 9, or Rise of Skywalker at 9, Force Awakens at 8, number 7. Yeah, because we were doing 10 films, 3. Yeah, got it. All right. So
this is where it gets dicey. So I would say probably Rogue One here.
Okay.
So Rogue One, this being so low in the rankings is not a knock on Rogue One. It's just the competition it got.
Right.
So obviously can't compete with them. But it's the best of, I think, what Disney has to offer. Like it's very serious. The story of the Death Star in its origin, or like origin in terms of like before it gets activated, getting the plans downloaded, and it shows the first glimpse of what I think of the rebellion in more depth. Like before then, it was my the one friend I mentioned earlier who critiques Star Wars a lot, who hates it. He always will argue that the rebellion in the OG trilogy was very NPC-ish. So that's what he says. You know what I mean? But so I think that, and to a degree, I think I know what he's saying. I think he's wrong, but to a degree, I get it. They don't give enough depth into the rebellions, the key figures. And I think Rogue One does a very good job at showing there's more to it. Like there's the bad guys in the rebellion, there's good guys. There's in the middle. There's a lot more to it. And how all the main characters die in the end, I think that's very strong storytelling. It's cliche to have the good guy in the end win it all and defeat the odds. I think it's very interesting to see, to get these plans, they all had to die, So it's a stronger story and it resonates a lot harder, I think, in a good way than the others. So that's number 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, it takes a lot of guts to have a tough, like dark ending, but I think when you do it well, it's so much more impactful. Like Revenge of the Sith, Infinity War, Rogue One. Like I love when the good guys lose in the end. Rogue One's probably the most hopeful of all those because technically they win in the end, but the characters you get to know unfortunately pass away. But yeah, you're a total George Lucas traditional. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Traditionalist, because you're like, no, nothing can go past those 6 movies that he made. So I appreciate that. So number 6.
Oof.
From George.
So number 6, I would have to say Phantom Menace, number 6.
Okay.
So Phantom Menace, again, I love Phantom Menace. This is in the territory where it really is just what's better, not what's worse, So
at this point, they're all you love them all. It's just minor things. Yeah, it's just minor things. So
the top 2 I love more than the others, but the rest is just like it's really little things make it better,
Right.
So, Phantom Menace builds the universe out I think really shows because again, it's very radical to go from this great grand old republic into this evil empire. So I think Phantom Menace really does a great job to start this lineage. It really starts the path to show you how it got there. Everyone hates on the politics of the prequels. I think it's a requirement. You need the politics of the prequels to show you how we get there. It's not just overnight changes. Like in the sequels, it goes from the Republic to the First Order taking over.
Right. Yeah.
So I think they did a good job showing you that transformation, showing you the Anakin's beginnings, the fear as the first stage. It shows you the fear of Anakin. So I think great film, but it has big competition. So it's number 6.
Yeah. No, I love Phantom Menace. I think it's getting more appreciation now as time goes on. I think people are realizing how impressive Qui-Gon Jinn was as a character, as a Jedi, as the model Jedi of what they should have been. Unfortunately, we lost him, and I think the Tales of the Jedi just makes Qui-Gon Jinn even more impressive because of Count Dooku's appreciation for him, and then Count Dooku's fall because of him. I love that George made these movies that have so much room to add additional story and context without ruining each other. I think it's just, I think it's incredible. So I really appreciate Phantom Menace, but
like Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, it's insane. It's
so
amazing.
Iconic, yeah.
My God, iconic to the 8th degree. And then you have like the discussion of midichlorians. That's the first time we really get an understanding of the Force, besides it being this thing. So great movie. It's just I can't put it above the rest because the rest are just we'll get there. So number 5.
So number 5, yeah.
Attack of the Clones, I would say. So Attack of the Clones, again, great movie. It extends the Phantom Menace and showing you that Obi-Wan Anakin dynamic that everyone really wants to see, the relationship between the two, the chase of Sid, and then finding Jango Fett. And to me, this is a big thing with Attack of the Clones is it shows you another side of Jedi, that they're more than just peacekeepers. They're detectives. They're investigating. Like Obi-Wan's on the beaten path. Finding witnesses, getting information, using his sources to identify things, tracking the leads down. That's awesome. That's also, you see that in Clone Wars, you see that in Tales of the Jedi, that kind of detective function of the Jedi Order. So I think that's a great movie. And then the Count Dooku involvement's awesome. The duel, I love the duel at the end with Obi Wan, Anakin, Dooku, then with Yoda. So I think that's and Jango Fett's awesome. So that movie's just, I think, a all around great movie, and further builds the universe up, and then kind of shows you that dark side of Anakin too a little bit when Padme and Anakin are in the field of Naboo, and she's explaining to him how the Republic's all congested, can't get anything done, we're struggling, compromises. He's like, if I had my way, we'd just have one person make the rule, we enforce it. And then she says, that's like tyranny, isn't it? So it kind of shows you it's more than just his love for his family. There's other factors there, but the love for the family puts it over the edge, where he blossoms into that Sith Lord. So Attack of the Clones, number 5.
Yeah, I love of course, the whole clone army thing, just them ordering the clones and Obi-Wan being like, wait, Master Sifo-Dyas, he's dead. It just adds so much intrigue, what the hell? And then, seeing it come to fruition in the next movie, it was all part of the plan to orchestrate this army being built just to destroy the Jedi Order and take over the Republic. It's so cool. And then the Yoda and Count Dooku fight, just him catching lightning with the Force is it's so cool. I love that part.
Dodging it, and then he says, "Oh, much to learn. You still have,
Yeah.
You think you're a big dog, but you still can't do this, can you?"
I'm 900 years old, dude. You're only 80. I've been doing this a while. Yeah, I love that. Cool. All right, so number 4, right? Number 4, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I would say, all right. So this is where the hardest part begins.
These are the big dogs. Yeah, these are the big dogs.
So I would say 4 would have to be New Hope for me.
4 is 4. 4 is
4. 4, yeah. So why I say that is because New Hope, again, all around a phenomenal film. It starts the whole thing off. I just think, to me, the others hit harder in certain respects. New Hope, there's still so much up in the air. There's still so much to uncover, where there's not enough clarity in terms of the stakes. And it just opens up the floodgates to the rest. But again, no hate whatsoever. Nothing done wrong. The top 3 is the top 3 in my eyes. So New Hope, just an all-around great film. Sets the stage for the hero's journey of Luke to save and rectify the tragedy of Anakin. But it's just the start. And to me, I'm not a big starter. I like the climax. I like the bigger stakes. We know what's going on. And New Hope, it's just getting us there, so.
Yeah, New Hope's incredible that it was made not knowing if there would be a sequel, and somehow it spawned all of this. The story was so well constructed at a foundational level that it gave you enough to be satisfied, but also left enough room to make a trilogy and then also make 6 more films. And then somehow we're here 45 years later and they're still making content that's valuable around that time period. Andor is before A New Hope, and it's still relevant and valuable to what we see in A New Hope. Same thing with Rogue One. So that's just a testament to storytelling, just the fact that you could tell that kind of story and make things around it and still not disturb it. So yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. I think it's Lucas and what he built and how he built it in a way where it really just is a launch pad to so much more. It's absurd. It's
visionary.
Absurd.
Absolute visionary. All right, yeah, so now we get into the top 3, and these are the 3 that I think most people wrestle with. I think it's very rare for someone to come on for these interviews and not have these 3 films in the top 3. It's just the order that you pick them in, and I don't think that's a mistake because these are top tier. So, number 3, what are you going for?
Return of the Jedi, number 3.
Nice.
So, Return of the Jedi to me is while again there's still 2 ahead, it's just insanely great film. I mean, where do we start with that? So really the throne room, that's just where I want to start. The throne room to me is just that's the bow of the top of the box where it finally puts it all to rest, where you see that the kind of same tension, especially when you watch the prequels first. You watch the prequels first and how Palpatine manipulated Anakin. and you start to feel the same way with Luke, but Luke's stronger. Luke wasn't so destroyed mentally at that stage of the manipulation where he was able to resist, versus Anakin, who was so weak, with so much going on, all that turmoil, he succumbed to it. So to me, I find it very interesting seeing, like, again, the duel between Anakin and Vader and Luke, and all that on Andor going on. Andor, right? I'm tripping. All this
Andor,
Andor,
Andor.
all this Andor stuff. Got my confidence shaking for a minute, but and seeing like the fight. People hate on Andor. I love the Andor segment. I think it's awesome. It's fun. It gives some brevity and lightheartedness to it, because the other stuff's very serious. All the Anakin, Vader, Palpatine stuff's very dark and serious. So Andor, the light, it kind of contrasts very nicely. The darkness of the room, and then the sun shining on Endor.
Good way to put it, yeah.
So it's peanut butter and jelly, Return of the Jedi, at that stage of the film. I think it's just a great way showing you Vader. Again, that's a big thing too at the end, where it's like Luke wasn't the one that defeated Palpatine. It was Vader, and it fulfilled the prophecy. And Luke was merely a tool. He was the final catalyst, that brought him back. The big catalyst, the final thing that brought him back. And it's like Anakin was the one to throw Palpatine off the edge. So he still fulfilled the prophecy, but it just turned out to be a lot different in how they interpreted the prophecy, So
of course, yeah. Great. Yeah, I mean, Andor, you see, you got me now. Andor, I love Andor because you have the Death Star too, so you're doing the same battle that you did in the first movie, so you have to add a wrinkle in it to make it more interesting. You can't just be like, oh, there's a second Death Star, go right at it again. They have to add that wrinkle, like, oh, there's a shield generator on the planet that is covering it, so we need to send a strike team down. So I really like how creative they got with that. Ewoks are great. Like you said, light and dark. I love that comparison. I haven't heard that before, but I think that's really good.
That's the contrast. Even Luke's outfit, it's all black.
Yeah.
And then it's not until he has Vader in his arms, the flap is undone, and it's white. So that's the contrast too, where it's just these themes of light and dark kind of battling back and forth, where it's so well done. And that's what I think Endor and the throne sequences are trying to do, which really contrast that dichotomy there.
Yeah, I think as a kid, I never really believed in that whole, like, oh, Luke could have turned to the dark side at any point, that's why he's all black. And I think as I get older, I'm like, no, he could have, like, he was there, he was that close. And
it wasn't far.
He was one strike away. He almost did it. Yeah, and again, I always come back to it. Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie of Star Wars, because in the end, the good guy wins by throwing away his lightsaber. The good guy wins by not fighting, and it makes sense. It makes sense. Like, it's not like contrived. It's not like, oh, he's taking the high road. Like, he wins because he knows that love will prevail. That's his father, and all that other stuff doesn't matter. And I just think it's so profound, and that's why it lives on.
It's like when he cuts Vader's hand off, and sees the electricity, sees the bionic technology, and then sees his hand, and then it's like he's thinking back to when Yoda and Obi Wan were telling him before he left, like, Anakin got suckered in here. Be careful. Be wary of the Emperor. Then he's like realizing, wait a minute, I'm about to fall into the trap. Right. I'm this close. I'm this close to falling in. Like, this is what Anakin was doing probably 20 years ago. So it's phenomenal, and it's so close. Like, my 1, 2, and 3 rankings are so close to each other. It's not like it's this tiniest infinitesimal differences. Like, it's so hard to. It's tough to rank the top 3, but I would say, if I feed the fire, that's my number 3. I would have to say.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and that's what makes these fun to do, because it makes people think. So, number 2, what's your pick there?
Empire Strikes Back.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, Empire Strikes Back, to me, it's the start of the hero's journey, in terms of we know what the stakes are now. For the most part, we know, like, Vader has his fixation with Luke. There's a lot going on around the Force, and the Emperor's calling in, like, we got this tremor or disrupting. So there's something going on in the Force. We feel the tremor. There we go.
Tremor. Yes.
That's what I was thinking of. Like, there's that issue within the Force, and the pinnacle of Cloud City. We discussed that earlier at the beginning. The Cloud City confrontation, and when you find out who Vader is, and to me, it's that in the hero, I prefer the Greek tragedy over the hero's journey. That's we'll get into number one. But for hero's journey, it's a very interesting segment of the big confrontation where there's defeat. It's the Odyssey is a good example of that, where he's confronted with a villain and he can't always just immediately, reign victorious. So in this case, he loses his arm, falls down the big chute, and it sets the stage for the big boom of episode 6. But to me, Empire Strikes Back also throughout the film from the beginning, I love the Hoth sequence. I love the Dagobah sequence, Cloud City, seeing that again. Also, again, I'm a big space guy, so seeing this gas giant.
Oh yeah.
Basically a floating city harvesting the helium, whatever gas it was that they were harvesting and mining, is so interesting. Boba Fett, gotta love Boba Fett. Even if he has their screen time, it's awesome. The hunt for the Millennium Falcon, and we get a lot more Vader too. There's a lot more Vader content in Empire Strikes Back. His chamber, you see the head for the first time. So There's a lot in Empire Strikes Back. And again, it just comes down to you have more knowledge. The stakes seem bigger. And I think it's just an all-around awesome film that is the best of the hero's journey of Luke, I would say, in terms of really, again, the grind on Dagobah leading to the confrontation on Cloud City and being defeated, but having the strongest resolve going forward,
Yeah, coming into his own and going from that naive farm boy to transition into more of a Jedi. I mean, still very amateur in it. I mean, you would argue that when he fights Vader, he's probably less trained than any Jedi that's ever faced a Sith in history.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't even think that's an argument. But yeah,
form his confidence in dueling. Vader,
yeah.
He's just swat him away. It's just and it's his father. It's an insane dynamic going on when you find that out. It's awesome. It's awesome.
It is great to. I love when they show that disparity of power between Vader and anyone else, and just literally just one handing, just out of here, just throwing stuff at him, and he's just getting absolutely destroyed. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we talked about it earlier with Yoda and the whole philosophical aspect of Empire Strikes Back. I think it strikes that balance very well. So, number 1, Revenge of the Sith. Let's hear the breakdown. The Greek tragedy.
So I'm a big Shakespeare guy. So I think we were in the same class for Macbeth, with Vital, in English.
Yeah. Oh God.
So I was a big fan. I actually was very interested back then, even though I was not very academically inclined. I wasn't interested in academics back then.
And now you're in law school.
Yeah, it happened, right? But I found myself very interested in Macbeth and Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. That's the third, but really Macbeth and Hamlet I found so interesting, because it's this person, we always read these tales of a person that has this major flaw, especially leading up to 9th, 10th grade, you read all the hero's journeys of Homer and the others. And it's the person has this major flaw, they overcome it, but they're tested and they overcome it. But there was never an incident where the person has a major flaw and they don't overcome it, and the consequences and ramifications that come forward. And that, to me, is really why I think episode 3 is so telltale, just so interesting, is he can overcome it. The main character doesn't always overcome the demon, or the main, the big person. It's not always great in the end. There's going to be darkness sometimes, And I think it's also about the utter seriousness, the dark aspect, just from the beginning, the Count Dooku execution. Disney wouldn't have the gall to do that again, ever have a scene like that, where you see the head rolling off to the side. It's a really dark tone. It sets the stage for the final transformation to Vader. I think that's the step 1 of the final sector of his journey to the dark side, So to me, it's just all around the Grievous engagement. The beginning, it's okay, but really in terms of the later engagement with Obi-Wan when he's fighting Grievous, and you have Order 66, and you see the scale, and again the Senate speech, it just builds up that final arc so well, where it really polishes neatly the OG trilogy in terms of the Empire, the stakes of how it got there, Vader's involvement. It's to me, and then seeing that inner turmoil of Anakin, where he's having the dreams again, and he's trying so desperate. Excuse me. He's trying so desperately to thwart off the possibility of losing Padme the same way, to an early death, an unnatural early death. So it's, I think just so it really resonates hard. It's very emotional, the movie, the roller coaster of emotions. It's dark because like the other movies, you take solace in the light. Like Episode 3 gives you very little room. They're not giving you much out in terms of like the roller coaster. They're throwing you down these crazy drops. They're not giving you much relief, much time to like really recover. They're just being bombarded with just emotional mayhem. I find that very interesting in the Star Wars realm. This just again the grand scale of the movie too, the CGI. I have friends, who would say, "Oh, it was horrible CGI."
Gotta stop listening to this guy.
He's a friend of mine, so I like having the engagements, but
right.
I always act quick and I put him in his place about it. But he will say, "Oh, the CGI, blah blah blah." I'm like, "All right, no." To me, it's like that opening scene when Obi Wan and Anakin.
Oh my gosh! It holds up today.
Oh my god, it holds up perfectly today. So it's like, to me, I don't know where he's getting his information. What is he watching here?
Yeah.
But to me, that's why I love the most. Again, like the scale of Star Wars, intergalactic conquest, empires and republics, and I think Episode 3 does the best in showing that vast scale and the repercussions of the Jedi falling and how they fell. And there's a point in Episode 3 where the Jedi are in a corner, where it's like Yoda, Windu, and there's I think one or two others, where they say like, whether we do this, Palpatine can do this. Whether we go this way, he does this. Like, so they were almost checkmated at a certain point in the movie, and I realized it's like
we're too late. They were too late.
We're kind of too late here. Like we're in a corner, and however we approach this, there's going to be a bad backlash of some sort, So I think all around, like, just really, and then the dueling, obviously, like the duels. I love the Grievous Obi Wan encounter. I do like, despite what it could have been. I bet you've seen the clips of the original Palpatine draft of how they wanted to have this duel to go, but it was in terms of time. There was time constraints. But they have this. I'll see a video where there's the video of like on the set where it was like stunt doubles kind of reenacting it how they wanted the actors to do it, but it was not enough time. But it was a crazy duel. But the duel we got was still cool. The final showdown with Windu and Anakin's manipulation coming to a breaking point, and how we really trust Palpatine in saving Padme, and then of course the best duel of all time, Anakin and Obi-Wan. Like that whole sequence is insane, and the Yoda Palpatine encounter is awesome. So there's just so much good stuff in terms of aesthetic, how it looks, the plot going on underneath, the actual, like, the action, like there's just so many good things about that movie, where to me it's the perfect Star Wars film. Like it's I know it's a bold claim, but to me it is the most, like, just the most well done Star Wars film. Again, and that's not saying that like Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi aren't close. They're so close. It's just, I think, in my opinion, the Greek Tragedy of Episode 3, with all the other factors I mentioned just now, is what makes Episode 3 the best. There's so much going on so many levels, where it just hits all these boxes,
Absolutely. Yeah, and the thing about Revenge of the Sith is funny you say, like, it's all darkness, but somehow it's had like this meme whole like revolution where there's so many pieces of it that have been memeified to make it like brighter, and like those bright moments in Revenge of the Sith, they're like funny now. And right. Even like the darkest moments, like that whole interaction between Anakin and Obi-Wan on the landing platform after he chokes out Padme, that whole back and forth they do is so serious and it's so dark, but people nowadays just like they recite it and it's like hilarious to see. And like, you will try. Yeah, it's.
One friend loves saying that too. He loves Star Wars. He just likes to mean that one line. But no, I totally agree with you. I think that my one friend is a different friend than the hater. But
of course.
It rings true to your testament that they take these lines, like then the Grievous encounter in the beginning.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's also okay because at that point there was just a gruesome execution, so they're gonna lighten it up a little bit with the I thought you were taller. I thought you would be older. So to me it was like I like it. I think it's still, I have no problem with that scene. I have friends that hate that scene, but to me it just is a comedic relief after a really serious moment where he's just getting beheaded.
Right. Of course. Yeah. The political aspects of Revenge of the Sith, I think too, are really impressive, and I think Andor and like Mon Mothma in that section is speaking to Revenge of the Sith and Padme's kind of realization as to what's going on with the power struggle and how a republic can turn to a dictatorship like that, just with some manipulation and just with a couple things sprinkled throughout. And I love that line, this is how liberty dies, with the thunders of applause. Like it gives you chills. It's so intense.
That's again like coming true back to what I was saying. Like a lot of these lines were written this way intentionally. So like that's how Shakespeare would have wrote it. That exact quote you just said from Padme is what we see in one of his dramas in England in like the 1500s, whatever it was. So that's why I think it's just all around. It's like the politics of how we got there. It's like the final crux of like the transformation as we're seeing that in the Senate Rotunda. We're seeing Anakin on a slaughter and Mustafar eyes turning. Like there's just so much crazy to unpack there. There's just everywhere in that movie there's something very interesting happening. So and I heard there's a 3.5 hour cut somewhere or 4 hour cut in some archive somewhere.
Need it.
I need it. I need that 4 hour cut, Lucas. Send it on my way.
It'll come out one day. Yeah, that dichotomy of violence in places like the Senate chamber and violence in real life, like Anakin and Palpatine doing it two different ways but still accomplishing basically the same thing. It's just very profound in the way it presents that information. But yeah, I love the list. I absolutely appreciate the George Lucas traditionalist. I fall in that line too. I have Rogue One a bit higher than some of the other prequel films, but for the most part I agree that anything that's happening with George Lucas should be above anything happening in the sequels, because I think he had a plan. He executed that plan, whether people liked it or not. That's their opinion, but his story is his story, and it was done very, very well. So appreciate the list.
Yeah, I love giving it. It was fun. Held my feet to the fire. I really like. I knew where I'd rank the top two. I knew episode 3 and episode 5 would be in those spots, but the rest I never really considered too hard. It was kind of, I'd really give it a minute to kind of organize it, especially the top 6 or 7. Tough, once you're out of Disney realm and you're really in Lucas land, it gets a bit tough to.
Yeah, Lucas land. I like that. No, it definitely gives some people some issues. Some people weren't able to, like they were like, oh, I only give the top 3. I don't appreciate that. I want people to do the full list, but people do it, which is fine. But yeah, no, I love seeing people think. Like that's why I sent them early, because I know people, like if I gave it to them on the spot, they'd be like, "There's no way I could do it right now." You have to think about it. You have to mull over it. And the funny thing is, it could change. Maybe not with you because you're a traditionalist, but some people it changes overnight. One day they're Revenge of the Sith #1. One day they're Return of the Jedi #1. You never know. But overall, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. I had a really good time talking and hearing your Star Wars story. Anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
Nope. I think we
hit everything.
I'm left empty up there, so that means we did the right thing.
Yeah, we did it well. So thank you again, Chris. Really appreciate it. If you guys want more content like this, follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. As always, thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Thank you, Chris. Peace.